Welcome to Mayfly Rising, a podcast dedicated to elevating women's voices, recognition, and participation in fishing. And I'm your host, Kimberly Ranalla. Mayfly Rising is a space for honest conversations, shared experiences, and thoughtful discussions about the realities that women anglers face. From access and safety to overcoming systemic challenges, it is our hope to inspire unity so that together we can build a better tomorrow. Thanks for joining me on Mayfly Rising. We've got a great show ahead. Today, we're joined by our very first guest, Julie Mattson, a professional guide and member of the U.S. Women's National Fly Fishing Team. She's here to share her story, experiences, and perspective from the water. The inspiration for today's episode comes from our passion for women's health, safety, and confidence in the outdoors. Right now, we're seeing more and more women entering the sport, many of whom are brand new to fishing or even to the outdoors itself. And while some of us grew up fishing and learning how to navigate the outdoors, many women didn't. And that lack of experience can sometimes create fear and affect confidence and ultimately limit the amount of time spent on the water. I talk to a lot of women who don't feel comfortable saying that out loud because they don't want to risk being judged or being seen as inexperienced, especially in front of others. But if we truly want to grow and sustain women's fishing, these are the conversations that we need to start having. So whether it's gear safety, identifying hazards like snakes or poisonous plants or basic survival skills, or even self-defense, we'll be discussing those topics in the episodes ahead. But this topic also leads into something else we're really passionate about: supporting female competitive anglers. Women in competitive fishing are working so hard to just stay in the sport, but they often struggle to find the sponsorships, donations, and financial support needed to keep competing. If we want to see more women represented at higher levels of angling, we have to support the women who are already out there doing the work. Today, we're joined by Julie Mattson, professional fly fishing guide, certified casting instructor, public speaker and educator, and last but not least, member of the U.S. Women's National Fly Fishing Team and competitor on the World's team. Thank you for joining us today, Julie.
Well, thank you for having me, Kim.
You've been fly fishing for more than 25 years and competing internationally with Team USA for the last 5. You earned a silver medal at the 2022 U.S. Nationals to secure your spot on the national team. And then you represented the United States at multiple world championships across Norway, Canada, and the Czech Republic. In 2023, you helped Team USA bring home a bronze medal at the World Championships in Canada. And the special one in 2025 was especially exciting because you and your team brought home the gold medal for Team USA at the Phipps International World's Championship in Idaho Falls. Julie, I think it's incredibly inspiring to see someone not only competing at the highest level for Team USA, but also helping represent what's possible for women in this sport. So take us back a little bit. You started fishing at 8, tying flies by 10. How did you get started in fly fishing at such a young age?
Well, I'd always fished with a conventional rod, but I always liked the fly part of it, so I'd use like a clear bubble and a little leader and throw a fly out there and drag it across the water real slow with a spin rod. And then I was fortunate enough to be at a fly fishing festival that was held in Livingston, Montana, and Joan Wolf, who I didn't know that's who it was at the time, I got to meet her. She was sitting at a table doing demonstrations, and I was watching her tie flies, and that's what really got me hooked. I was just like, I want to be her. I want to be able to cast like her. So I was one of those kids that kind of followed in the background the whole festival at whatever she was doing next.
Oh, I love that, Julie. I think that Joan Wolfe, there's so many women who admire her. She's been such a role model to so many of us. But who actually taught you to fish when you were young? What was the first time you went fishing?
I always remember family events, my grandfather, my dad, and just going out fishing. We hunted too, so it was just a way of life that I grew up doing. But with fly fishing, that was all self-taught. When I got my fly tying kit, it came with the little paperback book, and you tied a dozen woolly buggers to figure out all the different method. And then when I got a fly rod, I remember even catching grasshoppers out in the field and putting it on a hook and trying to get a drift and watching brook trout come up and take it. So, it just kind of evolved from there.
I'm going to go back for just a minute. I want to know, have you seen Joan Wolfe as an adult since you were a kid? Have you run into her, got to talk to her since then? Does she even know?
No. I always wanted to, but once I started working and guiding, that's all I do. I haven't had that opportunity. I always wanted that opportunity to go and thank her for everything that she had done, even though she didn't know she did anything.
And if anybody out there knows Joan, I think you should send her this podcast so she can hear the influence that she's had over Julie over her life and see what she is now, right?
If somebody does send it to her, tell her thank you so much.
So you're a kid, you were spin fishing, you run into Joan Wolfe. She inspires you to start tying flies and fly fishing. So you do that through your childhood. And so at what point did that become more serious for you to where you decided you wanted to make that a career choice?
I always wanted to do it. Of course, I had gone to college and everything and worked in that field for a little bit. But then I started looking around, and it was difficult at that time to get a job in that field as a woman, as an independent woman. So I had the opportunity to go up to Alaska on a vacation. I took my son there for his 16th birthday, and I thought, maybe I could do this. So I ended up moving there a year later and basically started going down on the waterfront. I was washing dishes for a little bit even, and I started jumping on any float plane I could, going out remote, learning the waters, learning the lakes, learning the rivers, talking to all the old timers that went to coffee every morning. And then I secured 274 permits, Forest Service permits, plus managed fly fishing. So I did both for 13 years. And then I've returned up to Alaska for another 4 seasons, 5 seasons, somewhere in there, and have worked at shops there. And then here lately, I've been managing the fly fishing at a lodge. It's remote. They were a lodge, saltwater lodge for 52 years, and now we've added the fly fishing to it.
What was it like for you early on to earn respect as a woman guide?
You had to prove yourself, especially up in Alaska. It's a little bit different because, you're chopping wood or you're hauling water because everything's so remote. But as far as earning the respect, being a newcomer coming to Alaska, I was from Montana, so that kind of helped because a lot of people think Montana's the next best thing to Alaska. But it was, how do you handle yourself with wildlife, especially bears, grizzly, black, just different situations. You're being dropped off as the weather gate come in. You're going to have to stay out there. It's all kinds of different things that could arise. So I had proven myself pretty much to everyone on the waterfront. I had one person that took me 8 years. And after leaving Alaska, he was actually one that called me and asked me to come back and manage the fly fishing and be the lead guide for his business for a couple years. So, over time, it takes time. of course, I mean, I had a lot of respect. A lot of the guides that come to Alaska or anywhere, are new or just starting out. And those ones, they want to learn everything. So it was great. But you do have those problems. There's always something that's problematic, and there could be some pushback, I guess would be the best way to put it, especially when you're in charge of them. But I've managed in that sense ever since I was 18. So it's been a learning thing on both sides, I'm sure.
So through that pushback, how did you handle it? If somebody else was experiencing this now, what would be your advice to them?
There's a lot of different elements that can come into play when I, say pushback or giving me a hard time because I was a woman and I was their supervisor. One of my big rules was if you have a huge ego, check it at the door. There's no need for that in the guiding industry. I don't think. You can be humble, kind, and be in charge and take care of things and make sure that safety's first and all those things without a big ego. And I think sometimes that's where it comes from. But I would say if somebody's starting out, just go in there and learn everything that you can. Do your research, know your waters, and just time and proving yourself. Every time I've started a new job, it's like any industry. You got to prove yourself and that you know what you're talking about and that you're able to put your clients on fish and row a boat or wade really heavy water or get them out of bad situations. I mean, I was protecting my clients from bears every day. I mean, when I was in Alaska. So if it wasn't that, it was a rattlesnake getting in my boat in Montana so there's all kinds of things. So you got to know how to react and make sure that you put safety first.
So what is the most memorable guiding experience that you've ever had?
Well, I mean, I've had a lot, but most memorable, I had a lady that contacted me and her father had terminal cancer. They were coming to Alaska on a cruise ship. It was always his top bucket list to go out and catch a salmon on a fly rod. And so we had a place that you could fish, the public could fish, but you couldn't guide on it. So I went to the Forest Service, asked them if I didn't take any type of payment, if I could get special usage for one day to have him on the water. And so with the help of my son, we got this gentleman with his walker down not such an easy trail and out into the water. And his walker had a little seat on it, and he was able to sit down on that and cast into where the stream comes into the lake. And he caught his salmon and caught a few of them, and we got him back out. And it was an awesome experience to be able to be a part of that. And then she contacted me about 2 weeks later, and he had passed away, but she was so thankful that he got to experience that. It was just an honor to be a part of something like that.
So what do you love most about guiding?
I love teaching. I love being able to share with so many different types of people. If it's young kids, people that maybe are in their 60s that always wanted to try, but they thought it was too hard. And they hook into that first fish and the smile. And even if they never do it again, they did the experience and they got, to see what it was like. But most of the time when it's situations like that, it seems like they keep coming back, or the kid gets the dad into it because the kids always wanted to try it. Now the father-son make it an annual trip and things like that. So it's just really great to be a part of that and be able to help people get involved in the sport.
So if you had to pick, how would you prioritize? Would you prioritize teaching is your favorite thing, the actual fishing your favorite thing, exploring, or fighting snakes? Which one?
Well, snakes are out. It's an adventure every time, even on, waters that maybe have high use. It's still an adventure because of the people that you're with and the experience. But definitely, I think, for me, it's the teaching and being a part of that and maybe changing somebody's outlook on different situations. Like I'll take corporate groups, for instance, high stress. And I've had literally people say, I just don't understand why you do this. And then after an hour, they're like, I understand why you do this. Because when you're casting a fly rod and you're thinking of all the different things and trying to get a good drift and mending your line, you can't think of all the other problems going on. Not kids or work or bills. And it just kind of gives you that peace. So, I've seen people that are recovering from certain things, medical or different things in life, and it's a true healing experience most of the time. That's one thing I love about it.
That's part of my story. That's how I got into wading. It was my healing journey. And I think that there's a lot of women that I talk to who seek the outdoors because that's where they find peace and strength and healing and confidence, right? It's very
Right.
confidence building or breaking for some of us. So I think that fishing's very special in all of those ways. So I've heard some of your stories and you're very brave because I would probably have just told my people, I'm sorry, I can't get in the boat. There's a snake in there. Even though you don't like them, you took care of it.
Yes.
And then when I fish, could I stand there all day alongside somebody else, teaching them, watching them fish, just watching them? And I don't think that I could. I'm a total jerk in the water. Like I don't talk to anybody else. I don't interact. I'm not getting out to eat lunch. I'm going to get in the water and I'm so hyper focused on what I'm doing. I don't ever want to stop until dark. So when it comes to other people, I don't think I could do what you do. I don't think that I could just be in the water all day just to help somebody else or teach somebody else. So I have to wonder, do you ever have a day where you're out there guiding with somebody and the fish are hitting, it's the perfect day. And do you ever just want to take their rod and fish yourself?
No, I can't say that runs through my mind. I think maybe if I had to think about clients and maybe what is a rough day, I mean, of course, when you're not catching fish, it's rough, but it's not catching, it's fishing. So those days do come up, but probably it would be when somebody's wanting to learn, but it's hard for them to listen. Maybe it's their profession. Maybe they're a person that's always in charge. So taking direction is tough. And that's maybe as a guide where it gets a little tougher to guide. But my thought process is I'm there for them. I want to be on the water with them, teach them, help them, and hopefully see them on the river again someday. So that's always my goal, and I know that I have time to go out and fish. Now, if the only time I could ever go to the water was when I guided, yeah, I might want to take somebody's rod. But no, that's not the case.
So I feel like just knowing you, Julie, you just have that heart that you love watching somebody else fish and catch fish and hopefully be successful on a good day on the water, right? What do you do when it's not a successful day?
Well, that's where I believe the true guide part comes in. And that is knowing your surroundings, being able to tell them about the area, teaching them different ways of fishing, if it's streamer, nymphing, why you would use those, dry fly, reading the water. So it really becomes more of a lesson, and it's kind of by client because some people want to learn all that stuff. Some people hire you because they want to catch fish. You're going to have that high and low, and that's where being able to teach them different things or explain something or get to know them. They know what I do as a profession, so I always ask, so what do you do? And sometimes that is a conversation, and sometimes might be in a high stress job or their job's stressful period. And so you just back away from that because you want them to enjoy the outdoors and the elements that they're standing in.
So I've heard from other female guides occasionally that one of the biggest problems they face, and guiding is when they guide couples and there's a husband and wife, and then the wife wants to resort to asking the husband what he says she should do in all these situations. Do you ever have that situation happen to you?
Yes, I've had all kinds of situations happen there. Anywhere from, well, I hired you for my wife. And then after the wife starts catching a bunch of fish, pretty soon they're asking me questions and getting flies and different things. So usually that one works out. And then where a husband thinks that the wife should cast exactly like them. And that's where they don't understand. Fly fishing, once you have the foundation down, it's an art. Everybody casts a little different, or everybody does things just a little bit different. As long as you're presenting those flies in the manner that it looks natural in the water, you've accomplished what you need to do to hook up with fish. So a lot of times, if it becomes a little stressful, I'll just, tell the husband I'm trying to keep him from sleeping on the couch. So me and the wife are going to go down river and I may teach her a few things or, things like that. So all kinds of situations over the years. And I've had guys come back and tell me that they would always go with a woman guide after coming with me too. It's just like I say, you're always proving yourself as a guide.
I want to address that too, because I have also heard this. I'll see these posts where women say, should I really go with a female guide? I feel like I should pick the guy. Because somehow women think that women can't be as good as a man at fishing or guiding, or in my case, creating waders. So what do you say to that woman?
I mean, it's like with anything, you need to pick the right guide. So when I say that, I think that there's women that are just as good. I can understand the little bit of stigma because men have been in the field longer than women have as guides. I mean, basically, there's a few that have been out there a long time, but not in abundance where you can go anywhere and just pick a female or a male guide. So when I say that, I think you got to do your research, definitely, and find out who is the best guide. Is it male? In that area, is it a female? But I think there is that stigma, and I can understand it. It happened to me not too long ago where I actually had a client that booked with me. It was an awesome time. But at the end, she told me that one of her girlfriends said, I can't believe you're not hiring a male guide. And, it was reviews that kind of saved me, and that's why she booked with me. But definitely it's out there, and that's something that I don't run into too often or I'm just not told about.
I think you have such good reputation, Julie, that maybe you're a little untouchable at this point, right?
Well,
you should
I don't
be.
know about that.
But I think you're right. I think we hire people according to their skill, so if you're going to pick out a guide, what are you looking for? Do you want someone who can help you navigate the outdoors safely, teach you about the outdoors, who isn't too scared to get a snake out of a boat? You also caught one in a net one time, didn't you?
Yeah, I had netted a fish and a snake came up and was trying to get at a guy's leg because we were wet wading, so I had to net the snake at the same time. So yeah, I've done that. And that I didn't like doing it, but I did it because I'm there to save my clients from anything that might arise. So yeah.
So have you ever encountered a bear? Did you ever save a client from a bear?
Well, I wouldn't say in the sense that the bear, had the client down or something like that. But as far as them getting too close, absolutely. I have two incidences that stand out in my mind. One was I kept hearing something and I look above us, me and the clients are standing in the water. We're in Alaska and I keep hearing branches and I look up and I have two cubs in the tree above our head. Like it was an overhang over our head. So now at this point, I'm like, where's mom? So mom was coming down the trail and literally when I stepped between the client and that bear, I was less than 2 feet from that bear. And I proceeded to reach for my handgun. And as I was starting to pull it out, she looked directly at me, shook her head, and turned around and walked away. And it was like, I mean, the adrenaline rush from that was unreal. And then I did one time smack a bear in the face because he got way too close. He snuck up in the bushes behind us, and it was just a reaction to the situation. And he ran off. But that person that happened with has been a client of mine going on about 26 years now. So a few stories there.
I would trust you. I would trust you in the outdoors to take care of me because not all of us are that brave. I'm not that brave that I don't know. I guess I have survival skills, right?
Right.
The idea is the education, have a plan in your head beforehand, what you're going to do in different scenarios, whether it's an animal, a snake, or, a human, but you've actually lived it. For me, all of those things are things that I am role play in my head just to prepare myself. So
you have to expect the unexpected, I used to go out and check the river when because in Southeast Alaska, it rains a lot. So sometimes it'll blow out overnight. So I ran down there at like 4:00 in the morning. It was just getting that twinkle light. Jumped out of my truck, went down to the river, and I wasn't thinking. I come back up, and now I have cubs in the front end of my truck. So, and mom's somewhere. I'm just out there because I don't have anything with me to protect myself. So I just had to wait. It all turned out okay because I'm still here. But yeah, those were, I would say that was one time that kind of threw me for a loop a little bit.
These were great stories, Julie.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So before we move on to our next topic, I'd like to know if somebody wanted to hire you, where do you guide it?
So currently I'm on the Lower Mountain Fork River based out of Oklahoma. It's kind of in the southeast corner. It's situated in Ho Chi Town. The next biggest city is Broken Bow. Crystal clear water. They're able to keep it cold enough year round because the water comes off of the bottom of the lake through the dam. And so it sustains rainbow trout and brown trout year round. We do have some hatchery fish, and then we also have native fish that are born within the stream system. So a little bit of both.
What is the name of your guiding business?
It's On the Rivers Fly Fishing Company.
I'll make sure that I add your contact information and any relevant links into our episode notes. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about your time as a competition angler. I'm really dying to know what made you make the jump into competition angling. What inspired that?
Well, I think, we were just talking just a few minutes ago about would you grab that rod from someone? So this was one thing that I guess I grabbed that rod. I did it for myself. It was something that I always had interest in, even in my 20s, but couldn't really find anything about it out west where I grew up in Montana. And you'd see a few competitions out east somewhere, but didn't, that was a whole different world to me. When it came up, I saw it online during, right before COVID and applied. And I thought, oh, this is probably just an internet thing. I'll probably never hear anything. Well, I did. And I got asked to go to a clinic in New York. And that was another scary thing for me, especially right at the end of COVID, was going to this big city. And I just, always had these pictures of what I saw on TV. So I was really out of my element. And I also wanted to go into it like I didn't know anything because, I wanted to learn. And so I showed up and I was, for lack of better terms, a hot mess. I mean, I didn't perform well. I kind of was all over the place, but I got asked to go to the next clinic. So I went to one in Colorado and I was like, I'm going to show them what I can do. And even the lead person for the women's was like, you were a total different person. Like, this is, I'm sure, the Julie that there is. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I was just, I didn't want to be like one of my clients that knew everything when I went to New York. So maybe I scaled it back a little too far. So that's kind of where it started. And I just got involved, and it's been a journey. It's been I now know women all over the place, different states, meeting people, doing clinics, helping other women get involved in it. It's just been an awesome journey being on the team.
So I've had a few embarrassing days on the water, especially when you're in a group. Oh my gosh. And you have a bad day on the water. One time I forgot my reel, and somebody else gave me a reel that was not meant for the rod that I had, because I had a Euro rod, and I couldn't cast. I could never figure out. And I literally was almost crying in the middle of the river. I was so mad at myself. So at that point, though, I was ashamed. I was so ashamed of having this completely incompetent bad day on the river where I couldn't cast. I was in a tangle. I was in a tree, and then I got so flustered. I stumbled. I fell. I just literally flopped at everything. That was several years ago. It doesn't happen to me that bad anymore. But I have a feeling that at your competition, your bad day probably equaled my good day.
I remember one time I was at a mini comp is what we used to call them, but it's regional comp now. And that's where it's just a small one being held maybe in Colorado or whatever. It's how you accumulate points to keep yourself eligible to compete at nationals and potentially get on the world's team and stuff. And everywhere I put my flies in, I caught a stick. It messed up my leader. And it was just one after another. It was so frustrating. And my controller was very gracious, like, you can do this, cheering me on. And that wasn't really making it better in my mind. So finally, I just stopped, took a breath, restrung up, got back in the water, and I did well. And sometimes it's just taking that pause. If you're getting tangled up, you're getting frustrated, but even if you're guiding, fishing personally, or anything, I've demonstrated trying to cast and I'm hung up on a rock because I was standing there talking. So, it happens all the time. If somebody tells you that they never make a mistake or they never get tangled up, that is not a true statement. It's going to happen to everybody. I always called the first day of guide season on the Madison. What a show, because nobody would have believed we were guides. We're standing on the seats of the boats, getting our flies out of trees because we cast it into the tree or whatever. So it happens to everybody. The biggest thing is don't get so frustrated that you want to quit. And so that's where you got to take that pause and just reset and stay focused on what you're doing.
That's great advice, Julie. And I love talking about that, because I think there's a lot of women who, maybe they haven't been fishing for 20 or 30 years. And then they get in these groups and they go out in the water and they get hung up in a tree, or they lose a fish, or they get skunked, or whatever it might be. Maybe they fall. I fished with women who fell before, and they were so embarrassed of falling in front of other people. And I tell them, if you're not losing flies, if you're not getting stuck in the tree, if you're not falling, you're not fishing, because it happens to everybody, right? Maybe if we have a perfect day on the water, once in a blue moon, none of those things might happen. But
right.
When you're fishing, things like that happen, and it's completely normal.
Well, and I think, like I always tell my clients when they I call them ninja knots, because they're something else. It's wrapped around the tip, it's wrapped around the fly, it's wrapped around the strike indicator. And I call that job security. That is job security of the guide. So, and another thing I think that sometimes people will be told, oh, you got to have your setup this way. If you keep getting tangled up because you're using that setup, change it. Make it shorter. Maybe only use one fly instead of two because they keep wrapping. Don't make your day frustration on the water. Figure out what little change that you can make that keeps you from not maybe tangling as much or being able to cast better. And those are always adjustments that I try and do with clients. If I have 4 clients, not all 4 of those clients are going to do the same. So one might have to have a little shorter leader, or this one, just is doing a roll cast, or this one's doing this type of cast. So you have to make those adjustments.
Yep, this is true. I think that would be a great thing for one of our Julie's tips and tricks episodes. So I want to move back to talking about competition.
Okay.
And I want to know, when you're competing, how much time do you spend training?
Once you start competing, I've noticed you're always training. It's kind of like you go out fishing with friends and you're counting how many fish you catch in a certain stretch, in how much time, what flies are working, what methods you're using. Maybe you're wanting to try a new one, a different style, coming up with something a little different with your leader. So you're always, once you start this journey, it seems like that you're always competing with something. If it's with the fish, if it's with another person, or with yourself. So you're always practicing, but I try and spend at least 3 days a week doing some type of practice on the water. If it's for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And then when you're home, keeping up on your equipment, making sure you can tie those knots fast, because every second you spend re-rigging is a second that you could be catching a fish. So you want to be pretty accurate in being able to tie those knots quickly and get back in the water.
What is the craziest experience that you have had while competing?
Hanging off a cliff in Czech Republic. So I had a beat, and first off, they loaded us up in these trucks, and it was in the back end of them, and we had to go down the side of this mountain like what we would consider a logging road, but it wasn't even as wide as a logging road. It was very tiny, and their vehicles were like smaller little trucks. And you get down to the bottom and you get a stretch of water that you find out that morning what stretch you're going to be on. And I'm walking my beat, as you do before you fish it. You have about 30 to 45 minutes to walk your beat and see where you should start. And I always start, at the bottom of my beat. And I went to go there, and I've got a taco bag, I've got 4 rods, I've got extra, everything, because you always have that with you in case something malfunctions. And I get up to a certain part, and here's this cliff wall with a chain. And I've got cleats on my boots, which aren't the cleats that you use for mountain climbing like that. I've never done that. And so literally I had to grab a hold of this chain with all this stuff dangling off of me and kind of just hop, skip around it, drop to the bottom on this big flat rock, and there was a big pool there. And when you're competing, you always, start one area and then possibly go back to that. Well, I went back to it like 3 times, and I was fortunate enough the international controller was like, you go out a different way. We're not making you walk out that way, because I would have had to shimmy it again. I think he was like, oh, I don't know if that girl can hang off that chain. I don't know, but that's the one I remember the most. But I tend to get those beats, on the Thompson in Colorado. There's one you got to go down a cliff wall that's not a wall, but basically a rock slide. And I always get that beat when I compete there.
Holy cow, I feel like if you played Donkey Kong, it would be great practice for what you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, Worlds in Idaho was no, the Henry's Fork. It was something else going down that trail where, that was at.
Have you ever gotten to a beat or been competing and just went, nah, I'm done. I'm not doing this one?
No, I've never quit a beat ever. That's not really in my vocabulary. When I've hiked out of places at the end, I question why I'm doing it, and that, yeah, I should probably have my head examined sometimes. But, but then you always go back for more, so it doesn't make any sense. But it's when you're tired at the end of the day, But yeah, you might question it along the way, but I think you question all kinds of things. I've been on guide trips where we've hiked in places, especially in Alaska. I had guys show up one time, and I felt like a Sherpa. I packed all their gear. They never even got anything out of it, but I lugged that stuff for like 3 miles up ravines, holding onto tree roots, throwing their packs up, going back, getting more packs, throwing them, and nothing was ever used. And I question that, at that point too, but I think that's everything in everyday life.
Have you ever been scared? Like really scared? What's the scaredest you've ever been? Was it the bear?
No, that didn't scare me. I think, when it comes to wildlife, if you show fear, things could go really bad really quick. Probably my scariest moment was I was in a float plane one time, and I always thought I knew what rough weather was, and they have this thing called a water spout, and it's where a tornado happens basically on the top of the water. It spins. And we were coming in, and you could see where we were going to land, and that hit the side of the plane and flipped us kind of upside down. It rolled us, and then the pilot got back control. It was all fine, but that was probably one of my scariest moments. And of course, I went back up the next day, but at that moment, yeah, that was a rough one.
That's scary. That's very scary.
Yeah. I feel safer in a float plane than I do on the big airliners. I have more anxiety. Oh, absolutely. Those float plane, you take off, you don't even know you're off the water. You land, you don't even feel like you've landed. In a bush plane, if you're like in a Beaver, most of those were made in the 50s. You're in an old plane, but it's got a new motor. It's not the same motor or something, but yeah. So there's that. You would love it. I'm telling you.
Oh, sure. I feel really safe on the water. I love boats. I love water.
Mm-hmm.
I do not, I could never skydive or go in a hot air balloon. I can't get on a Ferris wheel. Literally can't get on a Ferris wheel. Can't do a roller coaster. I don't want to be in the air whatsoever, ever.
So I remember one day I was out in a float plane. We saw whales come up from the plane. You could see them bubble feeding the round circle, and then all of a sudden they'd shoot up through the center. And then we're flying around. We saw mountain goats and bears, and it was beautiful, sunny. And then we were coming back, and a little rainstorm had happened. And here's a trivia question for you. What shape is a rainbow?
I know this. It's not actually arched. Tell me.
It's round. It's a complete round circle. So we flew, and somebody on the shore as we were landing took a picture of us flying through the center of that rainbow, because when you're up in the air, you don't see where it hits the ground. So it's not an arch. It's a complete round circle. So the whole thing of finding the gold at the end of the rainbow, it's not possible.
It doesn't exist. It's actually in the middle.
Yep. Sorry to bust that, but yeah.
So I want to know, I want all the scoop. I want to know what goes on behind the scenes, the competitions, like with the other team members, with your team members.
We're planning, we're looking at, we'll walk all the beats of the different rivers. We usually get a practice day out on the boat. We're tying flies. We're maybe able to take an afternoon or something and go see a local area attraction. But we're always prepping. We're always, we have a nightly meeting. What flies did you use? How did this go? And then once the World's event starts, you get hoteled with a lot of the other competitors. Usually everybody stays in one spot or close area proximity. And then you have dinners together every night. And at those times, it's like old friends even after the first year, it was like seeing each other again, because one of those people were your boat partner, or, they were part of your group of ladies that you go out with. So you're with 10 ladies from 10 different countries in your group. So now in the morning, nobody talks. Like, we're prepared mentally, we're playing our music, whatever it takes, to get ready. And then on the way home, it's kind of like a party in a way on the bus. You're talking about things, you're asking how you've been, just all kinds of things. But these relationships go further than that. At Christmas time, by Messenger, Facebook, we're saying happy birthday, Merry Christmas, just all kinds of things. So you build these international relationships too. And then as far as the teammates, we're pretty focused, but sometimes you just got to take a break. So we've done all kinds of goofy things, from playing games maybe in the evening or watching some crazy show on TV. But yeah, a lot of times it's being focused or sitting around the table and telling stories while we're tying flies and getting ready for the next day.
What did you do the night you won the gold medal?
Well, we got off the water and got changed. It's always this big rush from the time you get back and when the dinners start. And of course, your closing ceremony and all that, and getting your awards. And we had a lot of fun with the teams. We had partied, we celebrated. And it was everybody celebrating together and congratulating each other and stuff. So it was a great time.
Yeah, how did that feel? Because I saw some of your pictures. We'll put them up of the team getting the medal, and there was events and celebrations, right? So how did that feel, being the star of that show?
It was awesome. It's something that we worked really hard at. Some of those waters I grew up on as a kid and stuff, so it was almost familiar. We held our nationals the year before that there. We did a early practice before they closed the waters. So we invested a huge amount of time in doing as much prep work, practice together that we could to really work at the goal of that. And it was close. So, Czech had always taken the gold medal since the women's started going to Worlds. And so it was quite an achievement to be able to conquer that and take home the gold for the U.S.
Well, congratulations to you and all of your team members. I'm very, very honored to even have you here and try to support the team as much as I can. I'm very passionate about women's competition angling and youth competition angling and getting more youth involved sooner, as I know you are, so that they can develop the skills to become good over their lifetime and become professional anglers or have other careers in the fishing industry. But I'm very passionate about that fundraising part of that and the support that our competition anglers need. And I think that a lot of people don't understand how that works. So can you explain to us how this gets paid for?
It's self-funded. So with that being said, as competitors, we're responsible to get our coach there, get ourselves there. With that being said, we've been fortunate. I try and help with as much fundraising as I can. So I've secured trips in the past for Alaska, and we've been able to hold drawings for those and accumulate some funds that way. And typically it'll pay maybe for pre-housing or maybe a rental car or something along those lines. But, when you break down a competition, there's an entrance fee, and typically that runs about $1,800 per competitor. And for your coach also, that covers the medals and all the housing and food during the 5 days of the competition. And then prior to that, you have your practice housing, you have your fishing licenses. Like Norway, we need a fishing license for each individual water. Or this past year when we were in the US, we actually fished 3 different states. So we had 3 different fishing licenses. Then you have your plane ticket and luggage. And so all this accumulates, and it's about, for Norway and going international, typically it falls somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000. And we're not funded. There's not grants. It's hard to get donations, monetary donations for middle-aged working women. It does make it tougher. I know that all the teams struggle with that. So it is tough, but Mayfly gave us a lot of product last year, and we did a raffle and we raised some funds for that, and so just different things that we've done in the past. It all helps, but yeah, there's got to be something. These other countries like Czech, for instance, their government pays for them. So that's their job. That's their full-time job. And I think when you can because we're missing work too for 15 days every time we do one of the world events. So yeah, it's a little bit different in the US. And I think a lot of people don't know that there's teams. I think it's becoming better known as we do clinics, and then they don't understand how it's funded, which is by us. So peanut butter and jelly, cheap living, if this is an adventure that you want to be on.
So whatever you don't raise, you have to pay for out of pocket. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. And that's from the beginning. You go into it assuming that there isn't going to be any funds. It's quite a big commitment to make.
Huge commitment. That's a huge commitment. I mean, that would be very hard for a lot of people to do. And I think about some of our youth who want to be stepping up into the women's team. It's relatively new, right?
Right. We're going on our 5th year. The men's team has been around they call it the adult team because men and women did compete on that team and still do. So that team has been around for about 15, 16 years. And then the youth has been around somewhere in that neighborhood. I would definitely like to see it grow. We're trying to have more clinics for the youth and just raising support all the way across the board.
Yep. And I tell women all the time, you've got to participate in meaningful ways. You got to give back. You got to buy memberships. You got to invest in the people who are investing in the women's demographic. If we want to see it grow, that women also need to step up and do their part. If you could imagine anything you wanted for the fishing industry or for women's fishing in 5 years, let's say, what would you imagine?
That everybody's equal on the water. I think that would be a huge thing. I also would like to see women products get supported more so that there are more availability for those. I mean, I can understand both sides of that. If you have women's products, but the money's not being spent there, it's hard to keep that business going. So more support in that. I would love to see a get together of everyone from saltwater to fly fishing to everybody's just equal on the water instead of the more separate groups. Well, you don't fish this way or I don't fish that way. Who cares? We're all fishing. So that would be something to see. And I just think more education, having that more available and where people feel safe to ask questions. I don't want to say safe because I don't feel that, anybody's ever going to get hurt from asking a question, but just that where they feel really confident that it's okay to ask those questions. Yes. So that's something that I would like to see more of. And, and I love doing those talks. So, I mean, if there's somebody listening and you have a group or a Trout Unlimited group or a women's group or guys and gals or whatever, I would love to participate in those groups and help you out if you're wanting to get new people involved.
I have to make a point here. I've had a lot of groups ask me, we planned a women's this or that, and we couldn't get women to show up, or they showed up and then they were mad, or then, it didn't work out. And they're not buying the membership. They're not this, they're not that. What are we doing wrong? And so the answer to that is, women don't just trust men, women trust women. And so building a safety funnel, right? It's like a sales funnel, but it's a safety funnel into your group, right? Where you have women teaching classes. You have women holding the meetings. You have women making the decisions for other women in a group, right? Or they make them together. And that builds a safe place where they can start to trust and get to know the male group members, build a relationship, right? I have some people who think that I want segregation, that men and women, I don't. I want to bring it together.
Right.
But to bring women into a male-dominated group, you need the safety funnel that gives them that. And it is a safe place, right? And it's not that the men are going to attack them. But here's the thing. At least 70% of the women that I talk to are victims of either domestic violence or some form of abuse. And they do have, reservations about trusting men that they don't know. And it's not that easy for them to just walk into, that type of group setting that's male dominated. So I think building that safety funnel with a woman educator like Julie, right? A woman guide like Julie, and then you're the comfortable role, right? You're the comfortable person that can bring them in and give them a safe place.
I think too, with that being said, I think giving women the education, maybe like you said, in a safe space, it brings them to the point of knowing more about fishing. And then if they're put into a whole group, like maybe a TU group or a group that's male and female, they're able to carry on those conversations and know what somebody's talking about. And I think it gives them a little bit more safety then in that situation. And again, they have the knowledge and maybe they're teaching somebody else something. And so I think that's a good way to start that. Because a lot of times, I see people sit there and you can tell they're like, I have no idea what that person's talking about. I think maybe taking that element out of it would really help rather than sitting through a meeting and not knowing what they're even saying and being able to have some of those classes.
Also, I think women are in tune to women. Women read each other better because we know each other's struggles, right? And not always. We have mean girls too, but we're not talking about them today. We're not going to go there.
Yeah, let's not.
But no. So, for instance, helping with a class, one-on-one class. And so this woman was there, and I noticed that when the male teacher goes up to help her, she gets very nervous. She starts casting, wildly, unfocused. So I decided that I was going to go over and help her. I went over and started helping her, and she calmed down and she did really well with me. Although I did kind of tick off the instructor that I was taking a position because he had no idea. He didn't know what I knew. And I knew that this woman had some kind of anxiety with a man being that close to her. So after the class, she came up to me and told me, she said, thank you. She showed me she was carrying a gun. And she was carrying a gun because she had an ex that was stalking her. And she was so fearful that if he had showed up and saw the teacher close to her, the other man, she didn't know what he was going to do. So that's why she got so anxious. But those are things that I think women are so much more in tune with than a man would be. And I think you need a woman's face there to be that person for them, to offer them that safety and support.
Well, and I think it helps too if you are, because I have, a lot of guys that have worked for me, and I think that there's those unique guys, but having that female there saying, oh no, he's good, and and it gives that sense of relaxation too. And even when I go stand by somebody, they'll cast all over the place. I'm like, there's no reason I should be making you nervous. Well, you're so good. You've been doing this so long. It's like, well, no, I still make mistakes too. And, so then I'll walk away and I'll look back over and they're casting perfect. So, I mean, sometimes you just, as an instructor too, you need to give them their space and let them make mistakes and then point out things to them. Show them a different way to do it. Don't tell them they're doing it wrong. Say, you should try it this way. Maybe it'll work better for you. So, yeah, that's how I feel about a lot of that. And there are those situations that you have to be able to read people if you're going to be instructing or teaching or guiding or any of those things. Because everybody learns different. Everybody has different fears. Everybody will understand one way different than another way of explaining it and teaching it. And so that's huge to me. And that's what's such a challenge. It's not that I go out and I say, this is how you roll cast, and this is the only way to do it. And this is, if you can't do it this way, it's just not going to work. No, this is the foundation of it. This is what makes it work to do that roll cast. How are you going to do it? And then it's like, well, maybe if you don't use this as much, will that make it better? Or this? So it's just picking it apart and making it your own cast.
What do you think the industry could improve on when it comes to female anglers?
I feel that the industry could show all female anglers, all shapes, all sizes. When you look at magazines and you look at some of the models for different companies, there's always not a mixture of that. I really feel that the industry could do better with that to show everybody they can fly fish. Anybody can fly fish. I'm pretty passionate about that part.
I agree with you. I think the physical representation of our true selves as female anglers, we all want to be able to, maybe we would buy the magazine. Maybe we would buy a subscription. Maybe we would watch that video. Maybe, right? If we could look at something in the media and see the reflection of something similar to our own selves, regardless of our size, race, shape, and age. We all fish. And so
Yep.
I got to tell you a story.
Okay.
I had a woman who, she was actually going to go on a trip to Alaska for photography. It was wildlife photography, and she needed waders to do it. So the first thing she does is hikes to, the big store, sporting goods store, and looks for waders. And she's blown away that they don't have any waders there for women at all. So she leaves there without any waders, and she was a plus size woman. So she comes home and she gets online and she looks everywhere and she can't find a women's plus size that will actually fit her. She called me on the phone. I ended up talking to her on the phone because she wasn't quite sure how to pick a size. So I got on the phone and she said, I started thinking, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe, they don't even make something for me. Maybe I'm too big. Maybe people my size don't do stuff like this. And I said, well, that's not true at all. Matter of fact, you're the majority. You're not the minority. 67% of women are actually 14 and above. So what you're seeing represented in gear, what you're seeing represented in media and photos and in your Google searches is not the reality of who our outdoor demographic is. She was absolutely relieved to hear me tell her, because she had second thoughts. She was going to cancel this trip, even though she found us and found our waders. She had already gotten this impression that she didn't even belong in our industry or the outdoor industry to begin with. And I had to talk her down from that. And that's really hard. And do you know how many times I've had to do that?
Right.
For how many women I've had to explain they do belong here and ignore. I know that you're not being represented. I know you're not seeing yourself. I know you're not seeing your body, your age, or anything else in our fishing media. But trust me when I tell you, you belong. And so half of the time, Julie, I've got to get on the phone with them and tell them this in person. And I do that because
Right.
because I care and I don't want to see them quit or leave. And I don't think that people in our industry understand how damaging that is. And I'm, I'll die on that hill. I want to see it happen, and I'm doing everything I can, but I think that the whole industry needs to step up in this regard. It makes me sad. I truly get sad. This is something that I'm so passionate about. It makes me cry because I hear their voices. They tell me, how many women have sat on the other phone thinking they weren't good enough or didn't fit in or didn't belong. Even women that are members of other groups, Julie. And that, it breaks my heart for them because I just want them to come and belong and love it and fit in and find that same peace and healing and strength that I find in fishing.
I'm the same way I feel about the guiding industry and what's out there and taking women that have been guiding for 20 years, 10 years, and putting them all together and seeing what that looks like compared to maybe the ones that you only see on the cover of every magazine. I think there's a lot of guides out there that don't get that type of, representation that have been around a long time.
What do you hope that women listening take away from this conversation?
I hope that every woman listening to this gets out on the water. I hope it inspires them to get out on the water, to not be afraid to ask questions, to learn, to try it if it's something that they've never done, and encourages them to do that. I hope that they get some laughs out of some of the crazy things that we've said along the way or stories, and also more knowledge of how if we grow in the industry, that there's going to be more support in the future if we're able to change that, or when we change that. Let's say it that way.
Now, before Julie goes, I am excited to announce a brand new reoccurring segment here on Mayfly Rising, On the River with Julie, Tips and Tricks. In this feature, Julie will be sharing practical fly fishing advice, technical tips, and little things she's learned over the years on the water that can help anglers of all skill levels improve and feel more confident. So, Julie, welcome to your very first tips and tricks segment. What do you have for us today?
Today, we're going to learn about how to put your rod together properly and how to get that reel on there so it's not backwards on you.
I often get mine on the wrong direction. So you actually have a method to show us how to do this correctly?
Yes. Yep. It's going to help you feel confident when you're at the back of the rig and everybody's putting rods together and maybe it's your first time, or maybe not understanding how to do it so that it doesn't cause future problems.
All right, let's roll it.
For our first tip or trick, we're going to start off with a couple tricks to putting your rod together that makes it easier for you. Typically, your rod will come in these sleeves. You have 4-piece, 2-piece. Most rods are 4-piece now. Rather than trying to put the whole thing together at once, it's much easier if you do it in sections of 2. So, show you that. Set that aside. So we'll put our tip to our second piece. The best way to do this is to off-center your guides from these white dots that'll line your rod up. Come in a little bit to the side, twist on, and then push together. We'll do the same thing with our second piece here to offset it just a little bit. Just put a little pressure and then make sure that your dots are lined up. Most rods have these anymore. Some still don't. but you'll just push that together. You don't have to try and suck it in so hard, or you may not get your rod apart. And then we'll go ahead and line up our next. We'll do the same thing, offset a little bit, bring our dots together and set. One of the things that you can do too is if you don't have those dots, you can get your rod all lined up and then just either take a paint pen or some fingernail polish and put your marks there to kind of help you in the future. The other thing I see when I'm watching people get ready is they'll put their reel on backwards, because typically they're holding it in this hand, wanting to use their dominant hand to do it. If you put your rod in the hand that you're going to cast with and put your reel in, there's a little seat here that this pushes into first, and then hold it in place with the knob facing the hand that you always reel with. Typically you won't put your reel on the wrong side by doing it that way. So holding your dominant hand that you cast your rod with, put the reel on and make sure that this is facing up at you. Same thing would work if it was your left hand, the reel would be facing up at you. Secondly, I see people with their little leader and they're trying to thread it through each one of these eyes, and what happens there is a lot of times you'll miss one of those eyes and you don't realize it till after you have your flies on and you're down on the water and your rod's not casting right. So to make that easier, if you take, 10 feet of line out, 10 to 15 feet, fold it over just slightly, you don't want to crease it, and then start running it through the eyes. This gives you more of a visual that you're going through each individual eye. And then as you do that, you can bring up your slack line that you have on the ground. Try not to set your reel in the dirt. Try and put it up either on a patch of grass or a table or the back of your vehicle. Thread this all the way through. And then the second test that you can do to ensure that you have it through each line before you put your flies on is just kind of bend that rod and just double check yourself that it's through each individual eye on your rod. And that'll make a quicker setup for you. You won't have to redo things once you get down on the water and your rod's not casting right because you missed one of the eyes.
If you have any tips and tricks, ideas, or requests for Julie, please comment on our episode post on the Mayfly Society or email us at hello@mayflyrising.com. Julie, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your experiences, your perspectives, and everything you've learned along the way. We really appreciate the work that you're doing. We will be rooting for you. We will be rooting for you in the 2026 competition. And listeners, if you want to help support Julie or the team, donation links can be found on the Mayfly Rising website under episode 3 notes.
Thank you, Kim, for having me on, and I look forward to presenting those tips and tricks each week and would love to hear some response on what people would like to learn along the way. And just thank you so much. It's been great telling stories back and forth, and I hope that everybody gets out there on that water.
Thank you, Julie. And from one angler to another, I hope this conversation leaves you feeling inspired, informed, and more supported. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. If this conversation resonated with you, we'd love for you to subscribe to Mayfly Rising wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you know someone who might feel seen by this episode, consider sharing it with them. For more episodes, please go to www.mayflyrising.com. Or if you would like to continue this conversation, please join our founding sponsors Facebook group, the Mayfly Society, where you can share your thoughts.